There's a door. They can walk in. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for attending our second High School Journalism Network press conference of the 18-19 school year. As everyone knows, I'm Angel Verdeja, Communications Specialist with the district. And before we go over the introduction, I just want to thank again everyone with our Communications Department for coming out. Joe Weckler, our Director of Communications. Leslie Francis, our Assistant Superintendent. You guys know Gary Durenberger, our photographer, who's also going to be retiring. December 18th is his reception. So he's the guy who's taken all the pictures for all the years. If you have parents that have gone to school here, he's probably taking their picture as well. But again, if you're for reference for later, also if anyone who's not here, we have the live stream going about press conference. Don't forget, if you guys want to tweet out anything or social media, to use the hashtag CFISD Presser. And to introduce our guest, I'm going to bring up here Connor Dusky, who's the editor of the Elsie Howler newspaper. Connor? Thank you.
All right, so we have a pretty great journalism program here that's been growing over the years. We're really blessed with two great programs, the newspaper and the yearbook. And now to move on to our guest, Teresa Hull has served as the CFISD Chief of Staff since 2012 and is currently completing her 32nd year in education. She began in 1987 as a middle school social studies teacher in Vidor Independent School District. She joined CFISD in 1993 in the same capacity. In 2008, Hull was named the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources and Student Services, serving in her role for 4 years until assuming her current position. Her current responsibilities include government relations and overseeing communication and community relations, community engagement, community programs, and cinema departments, including VIPs. She also oversees the athletic department and the Berry Center, and is responsible for the district's planning of services, which includes enrollment projections, attendance boundaries, and future school sites. In her role as Chief of Staff, she provides support and assistance to the superintendent. Hull earned a Bachelor's of Science degree from Lamar University and holds a Master's in Education from Prairie View A&M. And she has been a trustee with the Cy-Fair Educational Foundation since 2012 and serves as a board member for Sci-Hope.
Hello everyone, Teresa Hull.
And Teresa Hull.
And just a quick housekeeping note, of course, if you have a question, raise your hand, and when you're identified, make sure you say your name and what school you're from, so we know who's all here. So with that, just a few opening remarks.
Well, just quickly, thank you for having me. I feel like I am back home. Believe it or not, in my tenure in the district, I was here at Langham Creek for 7 years. Actually served as an assistant principal and director of instruction. So I feel like I'm home, and I love all of the changes to the library. So is this the Lobo Creek over here? So this is good. This is a great place. But also, during my tenure as director of instruction, I got to work with Ms. Comstock and got to coordinate from the curriculum side, journalism and yearbook. So definitely not my background, but did get to learn a little bit about what those programs are about and work closely with those teachers. And I tell you, this High School Journalism Network has been a great addition to that curriculum and activities that you guys engage in. So I think Mr. Weckerly is actually kind of responsible for bringing that to this program, but this is fantastic that you guys do this and get that kind of real world experience as close as you can to having press conferences and then doing reports and writing stories. So kudos to y'all. Just a little bit, I know the topic that you want to visit about today is the upcoming legislative session. In my role as Chief of Staff, I also assume governmental relations responsibilities. And kind of what that means is I work closely with the superintendent and our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Stuart Snow, in building kind of relationships and contact with our elected officials. We really focus primarily at the state level, because that is really where we're most impacted by legislation, is at the state level. So we work to build relationships with them and share with them the issues that we feel are most impacting our school district and public education. Prior to a session, we work during that time to build what we call legislative priorities. You have a copy of those priorities in front of you. It's kind of a front and back document. This document's probably a little more detailed, especially on the finance side, than I would even want to get into with you guys, but you can see that that is one area. On the back of that, you see other areas that we have mentioned there, and just a little bit about how we develop those. Part of that is based on areas of need, areas that we feel need to be addressed. And we certainly feel like school finance is number one area that needs to be addressed. A lot of the other areas are based on what we are hearing from the legislators themselves, areas that are priorities for them, and we feel there's a high likelihood that legislation will be filed in those areas. So we want to make certain that we make our position in those areas well known, so that if bills get filed, our elected delegation knows how we feel about it and the impact that it would have on the school district. So that's really a little bit about those areas and why they're there. Oftentimes, the best approach that we can have going into a legislative session is to play good defense, to prevent bad bills from passing. That's the best thing, the most important thing we can do. We always want to be proactive, but it's sometimes more important that we are playing good defense and trying to prevent those things from happening. So I really want to provide the majority of our time for you to ask questions. So I'll just open it up and let you ask different questions you may have about those priorities or anything else about the session. Just a reminder, I know all of you have had your social studies classes in government, but the Texas legislature only meets every other year. They meet for 140 days. They convene on January the 8th. And so those 140 days that's a lot of work that has to be done. And the main thing that they have to do every 2 years is to adopt a budget for the state. So that's why finance is always a big deal, because that is if they do not pass any other bill, they have to pass a budget. Okay, so that is job number one that they have to do every other year. So, okay, questions? Well, y'all are going to make this easy for me.
Come on, someone's got to go first.
Do you want me to just talk a little bit about the priorities if you don't have questions?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, would that help y'all? Okay, school funding. A little bit about that. That has probably been one of the biggest topics that our legislators and school districts across the state are focused on. And I don't want to get in the weeds and talk a lot about details, but just, at a very high level, education funding comes from property taxes. Okay, so all of your parents are homeowners, you live in a house and they pay property taxes. Those property taxes are used to fund education, to fund the local public schools in a community, and in this case in CFISD. When Dr. Henry came to the district, and I assumed this role in 2012, he came in 2011, but I assumed this role in 2012, the state was contributing about 52% to our budget, or to public education. The other, what is that, 48% is coming from local property taxes, right? So we were getting 52% about from the state, and the other 48% we were getting from our local homeowners. To date, what do you think that percentage is? The state is contributing 32%, and the rest is coming from local property owners. So we've not really raised our tax rate. Well, we have not raised our tax rate, but what is generating all the additional money for us is that property values are going up, which is a good thing. When you're a homeowner, that's what you want. You want your home to be worth more 5 years down the road, when you get ready to sell it than when you bought it, right? That's because that's your investment. But what that means is their property values go up, they're having to pay more taxes, even if the tax rate does not change, right? So what we're saying, the state is reducing the share that they give us. So we're not getting any more money. We're getting less money, right? We went from 52 to 38% from the state. And they're taking all of the extra money that should be for education and using it to take care of other areas of the state instead of funding public education. And we want them to use all of that money that comes from property taxes to fund education, okay? So that's really what we're talking about there. On the back, assessment and accountability. I know y'all just love STAR testing, right? STAR testing is obviously big business in the state. We're not opposed to testing. We feel like that the state needs to have a standardized test in order to really evaluate the progress that students are making. I don't know if any of y'all remember several sessions ago, testing actually was reduced from 15 end-of-course exams to the current 5 that we have. We still would like the state to reduce the test down to 3, reading, math, and science. We would like to eliminate the writing and the social studies because those are not required at the federal level, and we just want to test as little as possible. So that's one area that we're asking for. The other area on the assessment, on the accountability piece, I don't know, this is again just a lot of detail for you guys you may not be familiar with, but school districts are rated on now what is called an A through F rating scale. A, B, C, D, and F. But it's not that simple. What are your grades made up of? When you get an A in a class, is it one test that goes into that grade? One assignment? No. Would you be very happy if it was one assignment that determined your whole grade, that went on your, at the end of the semester, went on your report card, went on your transcript? Well, basically that's what they do to school districts. We get a rating, and campuses get a rating based on the STAR test. In elementary and middle school, it's all based on STAR. There's no other factors included on whether or not that school's an A, a B, C, D, or an F. It's all based on how students perform on the STAR test. In high school, there is a couple of other measures, but it's not many. There's graduation rate, how students, the number of students enrolled in like dual credit and advanced courses, those kind of things. But basically, it still all comes down to giving a campus a rating based on the STAR test, the end-of-course exams. And we just don't feel that that's a fair evaluation of a school. And let's face it, what sounds better? Recognized or C or B? What sounds better? It just carries a different connotation, doesn't it? When people hear a B or a C and you hear, you know, exemplary, recognized or acceptable versus A, B, C, D even, we'll never have an F school, right? It just carries, it means something different to people when they hear those letter grades. And we really feel like it creates a negative perception of a school that, you know, may be a C, but it's a high-performing school. Does that make sense? So we really want to change that because it really does create a negative perception. Safety and security, I think that's probably going to be the biggest issue this session. Even the governor has pointed out that he will reserve like the top bill that gets filed for a safety and security bill. Now what that means, we don't know, but this is where we probably want to run defense. We don't want the state to mandate what safety and security measures we should have in place. We feel like that we should make those decisions at a local level, at a campus level, and look at the facility, determine what safety and security measures we should have. And obviously the community should have input, but not Austin. We don't want Austin making that decision. So that is a perfect example of where we would run good defense or try to run good defense, and the reason we said to let those decisions be made at the local level. Okay? Any questions on that? I feel like I'm talking instead of letting you ask questions.
Hi, my name is Yukon from Langham Creek. What do you think is our biggest safety concern right now in schools in CFISD?
That's a great question. What do I feel like is our biggest safety concern? Physical safety, I feel like we definitely are ahead of most school districts. as far as the physical safety features we have put in place with secured vestibules, which I know your campus is currently under renovation to get that, of having clear backpacks, doing the lanyards with the ID badges, all of the different safety and security measures we have in place. In addition to that, we've also tried to work on the preventative side and look at mental health, but I still feel that that is probably, and it's not my biggest concern, but I think that that's where we need to continue to put the most time and attention.
Thank you.
Is on the preventative side.
You described how you wanted to change the rating system for schools to acceptable, recognize, those sorts of words. How would you, since you seem to have a problem with the standardized testing being a major basis, what would be the new ways for them to rank schools?
That's a good question. What measures would they use?
Yeah, what measures would they use instead, or in conjunction with?
Right. That's a great question. I think that there are a variety of things that could be included in that. I think that there are lots of things that make up a high-performing, effective school. Obviously, standardized testing is going to have to be a part of it, but I feel like it should only be one piece of that. I think the number of students enrolled and engaged in fine arts programs, the number of students enrolled and engaged in athletics, in any type of extracurricular program. I think that there's value in that, and I think it creates a whole education. I think the, obviously the number of students that are earning certificates through career and technical education courses, all of those, graduation rate, anything that is more about all of the things that make up your educational experience except for one little test on one day. I just don't think that that should be the measure of an effective school. Climate and culture surveys, I mean, I know that that's kind of a soft area, and it's kind of difficult to put a calculation and measure on that, but I just feel like there's more that makes up a school than a test on one day.
So would you be more in favor of, say, a holistic type review of the schools for rating as opposed to the test?
Correct. Yep.
Keandra from Langham Creek. I was wondering, with getting rid of the English and social studies stars, do you think that the level at which students will be educated in those subjects could be affected negatively, since that star isn't something we're working towards anymore?
Okay, and I said writing, right?
Yeah, writing.
Okay, writing and social studies, and that's a great question, and I think that is something legislators have expressed about why they feel we need to continue to have a test associated with those courses. We teach lots of things. Lots of things are important. Do we have a test, a standardized state assessment attached to everything you learn? No. And just because there's a test attached to it doesn't mean teachers are going to teach it more effectively. I taught social studies, and that was prior to the social studies assessment being required by the state. I feel like I did an effective job of teaching that, and it didn't change, the level of importance of my course or how important I felt it was to teach that content. So I don't agree with the argument that's made that in order for teachers to effectively teach that, we have to put a state assessment on it, because teachers do an effective job without the test. So.
Do you feel like you use your career as a middle school teacher in the past in your current career?
Yes. I think that all of my past experiences through the education world have definitely helped me. Any experience as a classroom teacher helps you to better understand, what teachers experience on a daily basis. My time as an administrator, all of that, yes, I do think it helps me.
You referenced, whenever you're talking about the financial issues surrounding the district, the rise in property value in this area. what role do you think has the development of new communities such as like Bridgeland and out in that area contributed to the rise in property values in Cyfair?
Well, I think I don't know that Bridgeland has created the rise in the property values. I think the development of Bridgeland is evidence of a community where it is strong and people want to move and live. They wouldn't put a master plan. Developers would not want to invest in an area in that kind of development without feeling that that's an area where people want to move and live. And that's what drives up property values, right? The more people that want to live in an area, the more demand there is for the homes, the higher it drives up the property values. And you know what I think impacts more the property values in our area than anything else is how strong our school district is. I think that's why people want to live here. That's why Bridgeland wanted to build in this area.
And would you say the expansion of the school district with Cy Park and Bridgeland in recent years, would you say that is evidence of more people wanting to live in this area?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
How has the rise of charter schools in this area affected your work?
Well, that's a great question. How has it affected my work? Well, I will share with you, our superintendent does not like charter schools. He doesn't, and I agree with his feelings about that. But it's something that has changed. It's the state has really wanted to create this idea of competition for school districts to have to compete in order to have their students. And so with that philosophy now becoming more widespread across the state, it's causing us to have to start marketing our school district, because we want to, before, I don't know that school districts really had to spread and celebrate all the great things that were happening, but now you have to do it more than ever, because they've created this whole idea of competition, and you've got to make certain that you basically recruit your kids and get them to want to stay at your school. So it's changed in that we're having to market our school district more, which I think is a good thing. We love celebrating all the great things that are happening, not only at your campuses, but all of our campuses across the district. And I think we're having to pay attention to that more closely, because enrollment, our student enrollment greatly impacts our funding. So we have to pay attention to that more closely about the increase in charter schools and the number of students that may leave us to go to a charter school.
Do you feel that we are in major competition with the charter schools, or do you feel like it's kind of even between both?
You know, I don't think it's a major competition. I think our community recognizes how strong all of our schools are and the quality education that students receive, and the quality of the programs, the variety of experiences that students have the opportunity to engage in at all of our campuses. You know, I don't know if y'all realize that about Cyfair, because you know, you only know the school that you attend, but we make every effort to offer the same exact programs at every single high school in this district, so that kids don't feel this, oh, well, if I want to be in journalism, I've got to go over here to this school. Or if I want to be in, band, I've got to go over here to this school. There are a lot of school districts that really kind of what they create almost like magnet schools, where if you want to be in that program, if you want to be in, take an engineering course, a STEM course, or a lot of those, you've got to go to a specialized high school to take those courses. We really try to offer all of those courses at every single high school so that we can create community schools for our kids to attend. So I think that is a real strength, and so I don't think charters can compete with us on that, and being able to offer all of those things at their campuses. Yes?
Senator Maxfield. So as Texas's budget gets smaller and our district continues to increase, what would you say are some of the biggest successes that our district has had in being set apart from other districts and continuing to grow?
Great question. We're the third largest. I don't know if y'all realize that, the third largest school district in the state. We have only Houston and Dallas are larger than Cypress-Fairbanks, which is always kind of surprising. Everybody thinks a more urban city type of area would have the third largest. And we're the largest school district where all of our campuses have achieved MET standard according to the state. All of our campuses under the current accountability, because I didn't get into this, next year's the A, B, C, D, and F. This year we're still on MET standard or progress. I can't remember because all of ours met standard. But so we have all of our campuses that have met standard. I think the fact that we have incredible fine arts programs, athletic programs, the course offerings, number of students that in our district every year that are accepted into Ivy League schools and some of the top colleges across the nation. I mean, it's just a quality academic program that we offer along with the fine arts and athletics and journalism programs and all of those things. Did I answer your question? Okay. And we've been able to maintain that as we've grown and had less funding. So it really is, it's pretty special that we've been able to do that and grow at the same time with less money.
What would you say is like the secret behind that?
What do I think that's the secret? I give credit to the architects of this district that started with that concept of making certain that we have the same curriculum and the same program at every campus. And we never diverted from that, and we tried to stay true no matter where kids attended school. They were going to have the same access to a quality curriculum and the same access to quality programs. And I think that is definitely the hallmark of this district, and that foundation was laid years and years and years ago. And the fact that we've maintained that as we've grown is really remarkable. The other thing that I think is, just the planning that your teachers do, the content planning, so that even within a school, we work hard to make certain the same, opportunity is even available in this math teacher's class as that math teacher's. And we know teachers are different personalities, but even at the campus level, the same opportunities are there. So.
Thank you.
Under
I'm gonna try to get this.
So my question is, how would you say that the cut in state funding has directly affected the school?
It has been tough. I mean, we certainly have had to tighten our budget. We are reaching a point. We adopted a deficit budget this year. That means that in order for us to balance the budget and fund all of the items that we included in the budget, we've got to go into our savings account. Okay, so we adopted a deficit budget this year. We have been fortunate that our CFO is one of the best CFOs in the state and has been very fiscally responsible in managing our budget, and I think we've been very efficient as well. We try to take out the extras without sacrificing the quality. But you reach a tipping point between being efficient and being cheap. Does that make sense? Being efficient and maintaining your quality, and then saving so much money or not being able to spend money to where it starts impacting performance. So we're kind of at that tipping point right now, to where if the state does not come in and give us additional funding, class sizes are going to have to go up. We're going to have to start looking at reducing some of the program offerings that we provide. So we're getting close to that point.
Yvonne and Deaver, Langham Creek. Assuming that the session allows you guys to have an increased budget for the following term, where would the funding for the schools be spent? Like, would it be spent towards band, athletics, technology, or safety?
With the additional funding we received, I don't think that I can answer that specifically. There's a lot that goes into our budget. We almost have $1 billion budget. I don't think people really think about that, but the budget that we adopt is close to $1 billion. Probably over 60, almost 70% of that is spent directly on instruction. And so that's salaries for teachers, which makes up the majority of our budget is salaries, right? But not just teachers, but salaries for all employees. But there's another whole big part of our budget that includes maintenance and operation, maintaining all of our facilities, operating them, cleaning them, food service, the people that work in our food service department, the bus drivers, transportation. So there are a lot of needs. So I don't know that as far as the funding, I can say we'd spend more on this. I do feel instruction in what directly can get to students would be a first priority, but there are other needs that are equally as important that may not be directly related to the classroom.
So with Cy-Fair being so big and just having so many schools, recently, within the past couple of years, we've actually had a couple of campuses. But with this deficit that you talked about and the more, with the more money that we're getting, does Cy-Fair actually plan on growing in the future?
You know, we are continuing to grow, but at a much slower and smaller rate. It is because we are 76% built out or an area is actively being developed. So there's not much land left to really grow like we did back in the day. So growth is slowing. Matter of fact, we're in the process right now of working with a community committee called a long-range planning committee that's looking at our growth through 2025 and what do we feel like the needs of the district would be. And we are projecting to grow about 3,000 to 3,500 students by 2025, which, and again, it's an educated guess. It's not 100%, but we would probably be around 120,000 students. We're currently at 116.5. So we do think we'll continue to grow. We'll probably, start slowing again, just as Bridgeland starts to build out, Town Lake, Cypress Creek Lakes. I don't know if y'all are all familiar with that area. That's where all the new growth is. But what's interesting, asked Ms. Comstock, some of the older, more established areas of our district are some of our largest. Jersey Village is our largest high school right now. So it's interesting to watch. Everybody thinks the growth in the big schools are in the new areas, but actually Jersey Village is one of our largest high schools. So you're starting to see empty nesters move out, and young families move in with kids. So that regeneration in our district's happening, which continues to the growth. So, thank you.
I'm Tony Yars from Bridgeland High School. So I was looking under the local control tab here on the back, and it says oppose legislation that mandates performance pay system for teachers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, there is a huge push from many of our state legislators, including probably our governor and lieutenant governor, who would like school districts to adopt a compensation plan that compensates teachers based on student performance. And that student performance is directly state assessment STAR test. So we're not supportive of that. I don't think teachers need to be compensated, or their compensation shouldn't be based on the performance of students on one test on one day.
So
and then there's a number that don't teach those content areas as well.
So do you think, say, that this bill does go through, do you think that would change the style of how teachers would teach?
The style of how teachers would teach. There's probably behavior changes that do occur. unintentionally when you start tying pay to, student performance. There's just more emphasis and pressure felt by the teacher to get kids to perform on that test when it's, impacting their paycheck. And then, from there, the pressure gets put on the students. It's even more on them. I'm not saying that teachers do this, but you hear the horror stories about across the state about teachers engaging in, not such ethical behaviors because they're worried about student performance on tests. So I do think you run the risk of behaviors changing, but as far as the way teachers teach, I hope not. I'm not, obviously that test is important and they have to make certain that they're teaching that content and that curriculum, but I don't know if I answered your question. But
no, you didn't.
We got time for a couple more, so you have your hand up.
There's obviously a discrepancy as far as the level in teaching between one teacher and another. What would you say to a person who says, if there's that, then why isn't there a discrepancy in the pay from one teacher to another if their level of teaching is different?
If their level of teaching is different. Well, I think the thing that makes it difficult with teaching is it's not like any other business. I think there's so many factors that play into what they would measure that performance by. If they're going to measure that performance by how kids perform on a test, you could have a bad day on the day that you take that STAR test and not perform as well. There are other students that may be in a teacher's classroom that just have more academic challenges, and they're, do y'all all learn at the same rate? Do you all understand the content at the same time on the same day? And there's just so many variables that play into those students that are in that classroom and how they may perform on a test. I think it's difficult to then attach teacher pay to that. I think it's our responsibility as administrators when we see differing behaviors as far as their performance in the classroom that we address that. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be tied directly to their pay.
Then if the bill passes, could you see a potential holistic review being instilled as far as their perception or their grading of the teachers contributing to that pay? Or would you see it more likely as staying with test results?
There would have to be a different evaluation system for teachers. Is that what you're saying? Would there be a different evaluation? They have a new evaluation system now. All of our teachers do. I think the difficult part would be teachers who do not teach those areas that are tested on STAR. How do you measure, what are you going to use as the measure for, Ms. Comstock? What are you going to use for the measure for her performance? She doesn't give any of those EOCs. So what's the measure of her performance going to be? Her content's just as important. She works just as hard. But then how do you structure her pay if it's all tied to a student's?
Just give me the money.
It's difficult. Okay, take that. Go ahead.
Do you think that the changing in testing is going to benefit those with learning disabilities, or do you think it's going to remain about the same?
What change in testing are you speaking of? Reducing?
Like you're saying that they're going to cut out the writing portion and
social studies.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're going to do that. That's what we would like to have happen. So I just want to clarify that we. What do I think is going to repeat your question?
For those who have troubles in certain subjects in school, do you think the changes will benefit?
I think it reduces some pressure, y'all. For students that struggle academically, I'm not opposed to testing. It's what they do with the testing. provide the testing, administer those tests, administer a writing test, administer a social studies test to see if kids are progressing and learning that content. But when you start putting high stakes on that for kids that struggle, and some kids just get phobia with testing, period, to where they can't graduate from high school, you start tying teacher pay to it, it just gets out of control. And I think, if we can minimize the testing that's going on, and that if we are effectively assessing whether kids can read, write, and do critical thinking or, math, we have to learn those skills, then if a kid can effectively read and comprehend, then chances are they can go over and this social studies class, correct, and read and comprehend. Now, I'm not measuring, their knowledge of the Bill of Rights or, any of that, but there's the ability to comprehend that. So, do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, do I think it's going to help students that struggle? I think it takes off pressure.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I just like going all the way around that.
All right, one more.
I think she had a question.
Just close this out.
Do you, there is, about the, performance of teachers, there is an evaluation of a teacher's performance?
Teachers are evaluated, yes.
Yeah, based on, their passing rate or AP testing?
There's a lot of factors that go into looking at a teacher's performance. I'm not as familiar with the new system because this is this the second year for the new system, CF testing? Yes, you're constantly, as an administrator on a campus, you're constantly looking at those markers to see if students are progressing and performing. You're looking at, now it's 9 weeks for you guys, right? 9-week passing rates, student performance on AP exams, student performance on end of course exams. You're monitoring how, kids are doing when you walk in the classroom. What's the climate? What's the culture of a classroom? Administrators are looking at that, and I think these teachers in here would tell you that all of those things are looked at in evaluating the overall performance of teachers. So, yes, but just not one thing. It's a lot of things. Because they can tell you, they can have one class be completely different than another class, and so.
All right, I'm sorry to cut this short like we normally do until 5, but of course the fire marshal says we have to be out of here by 5. So with that, everyone give a hand, please. Teresa Hull. We have a gift from you from Kendra, our co-editor of our yearbook here at Langham Creek.
Thank you for coming out and answering our questions and things.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Y'all are so sweet. Enjoy it.
We want to get a group photo with you and all of our reporters. So everyone up to the front, please.